The Marvel Cinematic Universe has a lot of fans asking, what is going on? It's a question in terms of quality, storylines, and characters, and even though a lot of the post-Endgame titles in the MCU have been enjoyable, many aspects are leaving viewers disappointed or confused. In this video, we're going to address the many current MCU storylines, its unanswered questions, and new characters, and how some of that is becoming a problem, but how it could all work out in the end, and what the statistics are saying about whether or not it's impacting the size of the audience. So be sure to subscribe to our Phase Zero channel for more updates on the Marvel Cinematic Universe and live shows every Wednesday. I'm BD, let's talk about the state of the MCU. But be warned, spoilers for any MCU project released by the time this video has been published are fair game. First of all, let's talk about the new characters and how uncertain all of their futures seem to be. The time between appearances is growing tiresome and confusing, and I don't mean in real world time, I mean MCU time. Since Endgame, the MCU needed new characters and we have them by the dozen. But where they fit and how they're going to tie together after an entire phase aiming to reintroduce the universe, well, your guess is as good as ours. Where characters used to show up in their own movie and only a couple of projects would come in between their next appearance, we now have instances of characters from Shang-Chi and the Eternals who haven't appeared since. Both of those examples are only 2 years ago, but there have been 15 MCU titles since Shang-Chi appeared in his solo film. We used to see Thor's hammer in an Iron Man credit scene, the Collector in a Thor credit scene, or Bucky Barnes returning in an Ant-Man credit scene, all pulled from upcoming films teeing up the next story. Now, those are replaced with Shang-Chi meeting the Avengers 15 titles ago and it's gone nowhere. We have newcomers like Hercules debuting in Thor Love and Thunder, Clea showing up in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Jake Lockley coming out in Moon Knight's post-credit scene, and Eros, played by Harry Styles, showing up in the Eternals. We have no idea where we're going to see any of those characters or even sequels to those stories.
It's complicated.
We're told the legendary Star-Lord will return, but based on the crowded release schedule for the next few years, nobody really knows when or where or how. Of course, all of our questions can and should be answered in the upcoming projects, so we have to be patient. The undeveloped twist of Rhodey being a Skrull in Secret Invasion has been met with backlash because the hospital gown indicates he was swapped from the end of Captain America Civil War, which would retcon all of his meaningful conversations with Nebula in Avengers Endgame, Sam Wilson in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Steve Rogers in Avengers Infinity War.
You guys really look like crap.
It also means he wasn't even there when his best friend Tony Stark died. So now the still loyal audience just has to hope that the Marvels or the Armor Wars movie adds some depth to the twist so we can understand how, when, and why Rhodey was swapped in some meaningful way. And if it doesn't happen, then it's just lazy and lazier than the original reveal was. That optimism for the Rhodey twist being explained later has to be applied to things like Xialing's new 10 Rings group becoming a factor later on, or Spider-Man's future at all in the MCU. But with so many projects having come out already and standing on their own without connecting to some of the interesting storylines from previous stories, it's starting to feel like a bunch of separate franchises rather than one cohesive saga. I mean, they had to go back in and change the color of the Statue of Liberty in an episode of Ms. Marvel after it was already released because it didn't match the copper-colored appearance of it in Spider-Man No Way Home. And that's just a perfect example of how it feels like the MCU is telling too many stories at once they can't even keep up with each other. So now, there's lazy continuity mistakes which bring down the impressive, thrilling interconnectivity which we got to appreciate earlier. Now let's talk about the fact that the Multiverse Saga has now made several attempts at rewriting history in the MCU as we knew it. We've already discussed the Rhodey and Skrull twist, but what about things like the Eternals declaring Earth was a womb for a god, and those characters just sat out the whole battle with Thanos because they were supposed to?
We were instructed not to interfere in any human conflicts unless deviants are involved.
Why?
If we'd protected humanity from everything for 7,000 years, you'd never have had the chance to develop in the way you were meant to.
Despite the result of that fight directly contradicting their entire purpose when they had already interfered with humans in the past. Shang-Chi changed up the Mandarin and the 10 Ring story as it was laid out in Iron Man 3 years before. Nick Fury has had a secret wife all along, and Skrulls were responsible for everything that made him interesting from 2008 to 2019. Some of this does feel shoehorned in without much prior planning or consideration, but some of the other chances being taken are working. Werewolf by Night, for example, was an excellent horror-filled adventure with a solid story and a great runtime as a special presentation. WandaVision was a thrilling new format for the MCU. Spider-Man No Way Home set the standard for legacy actors and characters being brought in through the multiverse. That said, It is strange that more than 60 hours into the saga, there isn't a single other universe we care about at all where we've spent meaningful time during a Marvel Studios film other than the main universe. The closest we've come is Earth 838, but all we really saw there was a bunch of cameo characters getting off so quickly that even the actors aren't happy about how their characters were handled. And lastly, there's no real protagonist in the MCU. If an Avengers poster were to drop tomorrow, which heroes would you expect to be front and center like Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor were for Avengers Infinity War and Endgame? Sure, there's plenty of characters you might volunteer up as an answer who are very interesting, but that's the problem. There is no obvious answer for who is driving the MCU forward in any way, and there's nothing that points to such a dilemma being cleared up anytime soon. I want a protagonist and meaningful relationships between them and the other heroes in the MCU. If you want to compare Phase 4 to Phase 1, who is the MCU's Iron Man on the poster then? Who stands in for Captain America, Steve Rogers edition? The movies and shows are mostly fun and enjoyable on their own. I loved Werewolf by Night, I liked Black Widow quite a bit, I thought Loki was brilliant, and Moon Knight was very, very interesting. Plus, Miss Marvel's family is so much fun to spend time with. With all of these stories being so spread out from both tonal and story perspectives, the need and excitement to rush and watch these MCU projects seems to be going by the wayside as the appreciated signs of interconnectivity and storytelling which builds momentum has largely been absent in recent months. Now, all of that said, the people yelling the MCU ended with Endgame are outright wrong. Even if the numbers for Disney Plus shows are down compared to 2021, as we can all assume they are as episodes of Secret Invasion are being sent to Hulu in a move blatantly intended to increase viewership, the box office and audience scores aren't really changing too drastically. The average global box office haul for non-Avengers films in the Infinity Saga was $779 million. In the Multiverse Saga, that average globally is $776 million, including Black Widow, which was released simultaneously on Disney Plus and almost certainly would have topped $600 million as a low estimate if it were released in theaters under normal circumstances. Of course, if you include the Avengers movies, which Phase 4 and 5 lack, the Infinity Saga's average balloons up above $980 million, more than $200 million more than the Multiverse Saga's average so far. Then there's the critic scores on Rotten Tomatoes, which, love or hate their system, is the most reflected on resource we've got. The average review score from critics on Rotten Tomatoes for Infinity Saga projects is an 84.6, with audiences landing at 82.3%. The Multiverse Saga sees an 11% drop, with critics landing at 73.2% critic scores, while audiences actually climbed up 2%. So people are enjoying the MCU, and honestly, as individual projects, I've liked most of the Phase 4 and 5 titles, but it's the sum of the whole where the problems and disappointments are starting to set in over time. Despite the hits and misses, there's no denying the MCU still has some exciting tricks up its sleeve. The future still looks like it could be very bright. Deadpool 3 is one of the most hyped titles in years after just one photo was released. Loki's Season 2 trailer broke a single-day views record, and every update about the Avengers movies reminds us that we still want to see it all pay off with all these heroes coming together. Despite all of the MCU content kind of diluting the event nature of some of the shows and storylines, there is still an opportunity for it all to work out in the end, which is truthfully what I want more than anything as a decades-long fan of the MCU. For me, the current state of the MCU can best be described as pivotal. It's time to get it sorted right and pace the releases and storylines better and more cohesively, or risk losing the interest and trust of a big portion of this franchise's audience. How would you describe the state of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Share your thoughts in the comments section, or send them my way on Twitter, or X, whatever it's called these days, @BrandonDavisB, and subscribe to the Phase Zero channel on YouTube for more. See you there.